please subscribe the channel and press the bell icon to be notified about our future videos. Now about the exam. The exam name is Microsoft AZ-900. The exam contains 40 to 60 questions that you need to complete in 85 minutes. The passing score required for this exam is 700. Now, moving to the questions. Question 1. Your company has data centers in Los Angeles and New York. The company has a Microsoft Azure subscription. You are configuring the two data centers as geo-clustered sites for site resiliency. You need to recommend an Azure storage redundancy option. You have the following data storage requirements. Data must be stored on multiple nodes. Data must be stored on nodes in separate geographic locations. Data can be read from the secondary location as well as from the primary location. Which of the following Azure stored redundancy option should you recommend? A. Geo-redundant storage. B. Read-only geo-redundant storage. C. Zone-redundant storage. Or D. Locally redundant storage. Here, the correct answer is B. Read-only geo-redundant storage. Now, it allows us to have higher rate availability for our storage account by providing read-only access to the data replicated to the secondary location. Once we enable this feature, the secondary location may be used to achieve higher availability in the event the data is not available in the primary region. This is an opt-in feature which requires the storage account to be geo-replicated. Moving on, question number 2. Your developers have created 10 web applications that must be hosted on Azure. You need to determine which Azure web tier plan to host the web apps. The web tier plan must meet the following requirements. The web apps will use custom domains. The web apps each require 10 GB of storage. The web apps must each run in dedicated compute instances. Load balancing between instances must be included. Costs must be minimized. Which web tier plan should you use? A. Standard, B. Basic, C. Free, or D. Shared? Here, the correct answer is A. Standard. It fulfills all our requirements and it is less costlier than the premium and isolated. Moving on, question number 3. Your developers have created a portal web app for users in the Miami branch office. The web app will be publicly accessible and used by the Miami users to retrieve customer and product information. The web app is currently running in an on-premise test environment. You plan to host the web app on Azure. You need to determine which Azure web tier plan to host the web app. The web tier plan must meet the following requirements. The website will use the miami.wayland.com URL. The website will be deployed to 2 instances. SSL support must be included. The website requires 12 GB of storage. Cost must be minimized. Which web tier plan should you use? A. Standard, B. Basic, C. Free, or D. Shared? Here the correct answer is A. Standard. Now here the keyword is 12 GB. If the free plan gives us 1 GB of storage, shared plan gives us also 1 GB, basic plan gives us 10 GB, standard plan gives us 50 GB, premium plan gives us 250 GB, and the isolated plan gives us 1 TB. As such, the standard plan is the most appropriate according to our requirements. Question number 4. Drag drop. The company would like to develop a cloud solution by making use of Azure Government. Azure Government can only be used by certain types of clients to develop cloud solutions. Which of the following are the types of customers that can make use of Azure Government in this situation? Answer by dragging the correct option from the list to the answer area. Select and place. Options: a government contractor from any country, a government entity from any country, a European government contractor, a European government entity, a United States government contractor, a United States government entity. Here, the correct answers are a United States government contractor and a United States government entity. Azure Government is the mission-critical cloud delivering breakthrough innovation to US government customers and their partners. Only US federal, state, local, and tribal governments and their partners have access to this dedicated instance. Question 5. Hotspot. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true. Otherwise, select no. Note: each correct selection is worth 1 point. Statements. First, a platform as a service solution that hosts web apps in Azure provides full control of the operating system. that hosts applications. Second, a platform as a service solution that hosts web apps in Azure provides the ability to scale the platform automatically. Third, a platform as a service solution that hosts web apps in Azure provides professional development service to continuously add features to custom applications. Here, the correct answer is no, yes, yes. Now, this is because in the first statement, a PaaS solution does not provide access to the operating system. The Azure Web App Service provides an environment for you to host your web applications. Behind the scenes, the web apps are hosted on virtual machines running IIS. However, you have no direct access to the virtual machine, the operating system, or IIS. Box 2. A PaaS solution that hosts web apps in Azure does provide the ability to scale the platform automatically. This is known as autoscaling. Box 3. PaaS provides a framework that developers can build upon to develop or customize cloud-based applications. PaaS development tools can cut the time it takes to code new apps with pre-coded application components built into the platform, such as workflow, directory services, security features, search, and so on. Moving on, question number 6. You have an on-premise network that contains several servers. You plan to migrate all the servers to Azure. You need to recommend a solution to ensure that some of the servers are available if a single Azure data center goes offline for an extended period. What should you include in the recommendation? A. Fault tolerance. B. Elasticity. C. Scalability. D. Low latency. The correct answer is A. Fault tolerance. Now, fault tolerance is the ability of a system to continue to function in the event of a failure of some of its components. Moving on. Question number 7. Hotspot. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. When you are implementing a software as a service solution, you are responsible for configuring high availability, defining scalability rules, installing the SaaS solution, configuring the SaaS solution. Here, the correct answer is configuring the SaaS solution. Now, it is because when we are implementing a SaaS solution, you are responsible for configuring it. Everything else is managed by the cloud provider. SaaS requires the least amount of management. The cloud provider is responsible for managing everything, and the end user just uses the software. Moving on, question number 8. What are two characteristics of the public cloud? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Note, each correct selection is worth 1 point. A. Dedicated hardware. B. Unsecure connections. C. Limited storage. D. Metered pricing. Or E. Self-service management. Here, the correct answer is D and E. With the public cloud, you get a pay-as-you-go pricing. You pay only for what you use. No Capex costs. With the public cloud, you have self-service management. You are responsible for the deployment and configuration of the cloud, such as virtual machines or websites. The underlying hardware that hosts the cloud resources is managed by the cloud provider. Moving on. Question number 9. Your company hosts an accounting application named App1 that is used by all the customers of the company. App1 has low usage during the first 3 weeks of each month and very high usage during the last week of each month. Which benefit of Azure Cloud Services supports cost management for this type of usage pattern? A. High availability. B. High latency. C. Elasticity. Or D. Load balancing. Here, the correct answer is C. Elasticity. Elasticity in this case is the ability to provide additional compute resource when needed and reduce the compute resource when not needed. This helps in reducing the overall cost. Autoscaling is an example of elasticity. Moving on. Question number 10. You plan to migrate a web application to Azure. The web application is accessed by external users. You need to recommend a cloud deployment solution to minimize the amount of administrative effort used to manage the web application. What should you include in the recommendation? A. Software as a service. B. Platform as a service. C. Infrastructure as a service. Or D. Database as a service. Here, the correct answer is B. Platform as a service. The keywords are migrate and administration. Azure App Service is a platform as a service offering that lets you create web and mobile apps for any platform or device and connect to data anywhere, in the cloud or on-premises. App service includes the web and mobile capabilities that were previously delivered separately as Azure websites and Azure mobile services. Moving on, question 11. You have an on-premise network that contains 100 servers. You need to recommend a solution that provides additional resource to your users. The solution must minimize capital and operational expenditure costs. What should you include in the recommendation? A. A complete migration to the public cloud. B. An additional data center. C. A private cloud. D. A hybrid cloud. Here, the correct answer is D. A hybrid cloud. A hybrid cloud is a combination of a private cloud and a public cloud. Capital expenditure is the spending of money upfront for infrastructure such as new servers. With a hybrid cloud, you can continue to use the on-premises servers while adding new servers in the public cloud. Adding new servers in Azure minimizes the capital expenditure cost, as you are not paying for new servers as you would if you deployed new server on premises. Moving on, question number 12. You plan to migrate several servers from an on-premises network to Azure. What is an advantage of using a public cloud service for the servers over an on-premises network? A. The public cloud is owned by the public, not a private corporation. B. The public cloud is a crowdsourcing solution that provides corporations with the ability to enhance the cloud. C. All public cloud resources can be freely accessed by every member of the public. Or D. The public cloud is a shared entity whereby multiple corporations each use a portion of the resource in the cloud. Here, the correct answer is D. The public cloud is a shared entity whereby multiple corporations each use a portion of the resources in the cloud. The hardware resources are managed by the cloud provider. Multiple companies create resources such as virtual machines and virtual networks on the hardware resources. Question 13. In which type of cloud model are all the hardware resources owned by a third party and shared between multiple tenants? A. Private. B. Hybrid. C. Public. Here, the correct answer is C. Public. Private cloud is taken care of by the internal organization to which it belongs. Public cloud is entirely taken care of by a third party. Hybrid cloud is a combination of on-premise and public cloud. Moving on. Question number 14. You have 1000 virtual machines hosted on the Hyper-V host in a data center. You plan to migrate all the virtual machines to an Azure pay-as-you-go subscription. You need to identify which expenditure model to use for the planned Azure solution. Which expenditure model should you identify? A. Operational. B. Elastic. C. Capital. Or D. Scalable. Here, the correct answer is A. Operational. One of the major changes that you will face when you move from on-premise cloud to the public cloud is the switch from capital expenditure to operating expenditure. This switch also requires more careful management of your costs. The expenditure models are either Capex or Opex. Capex is what you pay upfront on-premise for servers, racks, cooling, security, the data center itself. Opex is what you pay to keep your infrastructure operational, like IT staff. In this case, when you move to the cloud, what you identify in this case is the Opex or operational model. Moving on, question number 15. Your company has an on-premise network that contains multiple servers. The company plans to migrate servers to Azure virtual machines. You need to identify which administrative responsibilities will be eliminated after the planned migration. Which two responsibilities should you identify? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Note, each correct selection is worth 1 point. A. Replacing failed server hardware. B. Backing up application data. C. Managing physical server security. D. Updating servers operating systems. E. Managing permissions to share documents. Here, the correct answer is A and C. Azure virtual machines run on Hyper-V physical servers. The physical servers are owned and managed by Microsoft. As an Azure customer, you have no access to the physical servers. Microsoft manages the replacement of failed server hardware and the security of the physical servers, so you don't need to. Moving on, question number 16. You plan to provision infrastructure as a service resource in Azure. Which resource is an example of IaaS? A. An Azure web app. B. An Azure virtual machine. C. An Azure logic app. Or D. An Azure SQL database. Here, the correct answer is B. An Azure virtual machine. Now, this is because an Azure virtual machine is an example of IaaS. The other options that we have been given, such as Azure Web App, Azure Logic App, and Azure SQL Database, are all examples of Platform as a Service. Moving on, question 17. To which cloud models can you deploy physical servers? A. Private cloud and hybrid cloud only. B. Private cloud only. C. Private cloud, hybrid cloud, and public cloud. Or D. Hybrid cloud only. Here, the correct answer is A. Private cloud and hybrid cloud only. It is because a private cloud is on-premises, so you can deploy physical servers. A hybrid cloud is a mix of on-premise and public cloud resources, so on it you can deploy physical servers also. Moving on. Question 18. Drag drop. Your company intends to subscribe to an Azure support plan. The support plan must allow for new support requests to be opened. Which of the following are support plans that will allow this? Answer by dragging the correct option from the list to the answer area. Select and place. Options: Basic, Developer, Standard, Professional Direct, or Premier. Here, the correct options are Basic, Developer, Standard, and Professional Direct. This is because Premier is now only supported for the existing users until 1st July 2022, but not for the new users. This question shows that you are a new user. Moving on. Question 19. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. Note, each correct selection is worth 1 point. Hot area. Now these are the statements. Azure provides flexibility between capital expenditure and operational expenditure. If you create two Azure virtual machines that use the B2S size, each virtual machines will always generate the same monthly cost. When an Azure virtual machine is stopped, you continue to pay storage costs associated to the virtual machine. Here, the correct answer is yes, no, yes. In box 1, traditionally, IT expenses have been considered a capital expenditure. Today, with the move to the cloud and the pay-as-you-go model, organizations have the ability to stretch their budgets and are shifting their IT Capex costs to operating expenditure. Instead, this flexibility in accounting terms is now an option due to the service model of purchasing software, cloud storage, and other IT-related sources. Box 2. Two virtual machines using the same size could have different disk configurations. Therefore, the monthly cost could be different. Box 3. When an Azure virtual machine is stopped, you don't pay for the virtual machine. However, you do still pay for the storage cost associated to the virtual machines. Moving on. Question 20. Hotspot. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Hot area. An organization that hosts its infrastructure no longer requires a data center. A in a private cloud, B in a hybrid cloud, C in the public cloud, or D on a Hyper-V host. Here, the correct answer is C in a public cloud. This is because a private cloud is hosted in your data center. Therefore, you cannot close your data center if you are using a private cloud. A public cloud is hosted externally, for example, in Microsoft Azure. An organization that hosts its infrastructure in a public cloud can close its data center. Public cloud is the most common deployment model. In this case, you have no local hardware to manage or keep up to date. Everything runs on your cloud provider hardware. Moving on. Question 21. Hotspot. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. When planning to migrate a public website to Azure, you must plan to A. Deploy a VPN, B. Pay monthly usage cost, C. Pay to transfer all the website data to Azure, or D. Reduce the number of connections to the website. Here, the correct answer is B. Pay monthly usage costs. When planning to migrate a public website to Azure, you must plan to pay monthly usage cost. This is because Azure uses the pay-as-you-go model. Moving on, question number 22. Which cloud development solution is used for Azure virtual machines and Azure SQL databases? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. Each correct selection is worth 1 point. Hot area: Azure virtual machines, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, Azure SQL database, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. Here, the correct answer is infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. This is because Azure virtual machines are infrastructure as a service. Infrastructure as a service is the most flexible category of cloud services. It aims to give you complete control over the hardware that runs your application. Azure SQL databases are platform as a service. Azure SQL database is fully managed platform as a service database engine that handles most of the database management functions such as upgrading, patching, backups, and monitoring without user involvement. Azure SQL databases is always running on the latest stable version of SQL Server database engine and patched OS with 99.99% availability. Past capabilities that are built into Azure SQL databases enable you to focus on the domain-specific database administration and optimization activities that are critical for your business. Question number 23. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true. Otherwise, select no. Note: each correct selection is worth 1 point. Hot area: to complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. To achieve a hybrid cloud model, a company must always migrate from a private cloud model. A company can extend the capacity of its internal network by using the public cloud. In a public cloud model, only guest users at your company can access the resources in the cloud. Here, the correct answer is no, yes, no. This is because it is not true that a company must always migrate from a private cloud model to implement a hybrid cloud. You could start with a public cloud and then combine that with an on-premise infrastructure to implement a hybrid cloud. A company can extend the capacity of its internal network by using the public cloud. This is very common. When you need more capacity, rather than pay out for a new on-premise infrastructure, you can configure a cloud environment and connect your on-premise network to the cloud environment by using a VPN. Box 3. It is not true that only guest user can access cloud resources. You can give anyone with an account in Azure Active Directory access to the cloud resources. There are many authentication scenarios, but a common one is to replicate your on-premise Active Directory accounts to Azure Active Directory and provide access to the Azure Active Directory accounts. Another commonly used authentication method is federation, where authentication for access to cloud resources is passed to another authentication provider, such as an on-premises Active Directory. Moving on, question number 24. Hotspot. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Hot area. Azure Site Recovery provides fault tolerance, disaster recovery, elasticity, high availability for virtual machines. Here, the correct option is disaster recovery. Azure Site Recovery is a disaster recovery service provided by Microsoft Azure, which can be used to protect and recover virtual machines. Question number 25. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Hot area. An Azure web app that queries an on-premises Microsoft SQL server is an example of a hybrid, multi-vendor, private, public cloud. Here, the correct answer is hybrid. Hybrid cloud, sometimes also called as a cloud hybrid, is a computing environment that combines an on-premise data center with a public cloud, allowing data and applications to be shared between them. Moving on, question number 26. Drag and drop. Match the Azure service benefits to the correct descriptions. Instruction: to answer, drag the appropriate benefit from the column on the left to its description on the right. Each benefit may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Note: each correct match is worth 1 point. Select and place. Now, our answer options are disaster recovery, fault tolerance, low latency, and dynamic scalability. Now, our answer area is a cloud service that remains available after a failure occurs, a cloud service that can be recovered after a failure occurs, a cloud service that performs quickly when demand increases, a cloud service that can be accessed quickly from the internet. Here, the correct sequence is fault tolerance in first, disaster recovery in second, dynamic scalability in third, and low latency for fourth. It is because fault tolerance is the ability of a service to remain available after a failure of one of the components of the service. For example, a service running on multiple servers can withstand the failure of one of the servers. Disaster recovery is the recovery of a service after a failure. For example, restoring a virtual machine from backup after a virtual machine failure. Dynamic scalability is the ability for compute resources to be added to a service when the service is under heavy load. For example, in a virtual machine scale set, additional instances of the virtual machines are added when the existing virtual machines are under heavy load. Latency is the time a service takes to respond to requests. For example, the time it takes for a web page to be returned from a web server. Low latency means low response time, which means a quicker response. Question number 27. Hotspot. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Hot area. These are the statements. To implement a hybrid cloud model, a company must have an internal network. A company can extend the computing resources of its internal network by using a hybrid cloud. In a public cloud model, only guest users at your company can access the resource in the cloud. Here, the correct answers are yes, yes, no. Now, this is because for box 1, it states it is not true that a company must always migrate from a private cloud model or must first have a private cloud model to implement a hybrid cloud. You could start with a public cloud and then combine that with an on-premise infrastructure to implement a hybrid cloud. This is true, but how can you have a hybrid with having both on-prem and online infrastructure in place? Think about it. If you start with on-prem, then you need to first have online infrastructure before you can be considered hybrid. And if you start online, then you need to have on-prem infrastructure before you can be considered hybrid. So you need to have both first. Until then, you are either private or public, but not hybrid. For box 2, a company can extend the computing resources of its internal network by using the public cloud. This is very common. When you need more resources, rather than pay out for new on-premise infrastructure, you can configure a cloud environment and connect your on-premise network to the cloud environment by using a VPN. Box 3. It is not true that only guest users can access cloud resources. You can give anyone with an account in Azure Active Directory access to the cloud resources. Moving on. Question 28. Hotspot. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. These are the statements. Azure pay-as-you-go pricing is an example of Capex. Paying electricity for your data center is an example of Opex. Deploying your own data center is an example of Capex. Here, the correct answer is no, yes, yes. Now, one of the major changes that you will face when you move from on-premise cloud to the public cloud is the switch from capital expenditure to operating expenditure. Now, for box 1, with the pay-as-go model, you pay for services as you use them. This is Opex, not Capex. For box 2, electricity is not an asset. The company cannot own it. It is seen as an Opex. In box 3, deploying your own data center is an example of Capex. This is because you need to purchase all the infrastructure upfront before you can use it. Moving on, question number 29. Hotspot. To complete the sentence, select the appropriate option in the answer area. Statements. A platform as a service solution provides full control of operating systems that host applications. A platform as a service solution provides additional memory to apps by changing pricing tiers. A platform as a service solution can automatically scale the number of instances. Here, The correct answer is no, yes, yes. Now, this is because when you create an app service plan in a certain region, a set of compute resources is created for that plan in that region. Whatever apps you put into this app service plan run on these compute resources as defined by your app service plan. Each app service plan defines operating system, region, number of virtual machines instances, size of virtual machine instances, pricing tier. Moving on. Now, it is to be noted that the questions from 30 to 40 are included in a number of questions that depict various identical setups. However, every question has a distinctive result. Establish if the solution satisfies the requirements. Question 30. A company's Azure subscription includes a basic support plan. They would like to request an assessment of an Azure environment's design from Microsoft. This is, however, not supported by the existing plan. You want to make sure that the company subscribes to a support plan that allows this functionality while keeping expenses to a minimum. Solution. You recommend that the company subscribes to the Professional Direct Support Plan. Does that solution meet the goal? The correct answer is no. Now, this is because to request an assessment of your Azure environment design from Microsoft, you will need to have an Azure support plan that includes access to the Azure Architecture Center. This service provides guidance and best practices for designing and deploying solutions on Azure and includes access to a team of Azure architecture experts who can provide personalized assistance. There are three Azure support plans that include access to the Azure Architecture Center: the Standard, Professional Direct, and Premier plans. Of these, the Standard plan is the most economical option. The Standard plan includes the following benefits: access to the Azure Architecture Center, unlimited technical support, 24 by 7 support, support through Azure Portal, Azure Support API, and Azure Support Center. Monthly Azure Service Health notifications. The cost of the standard plan is based on your Azure spend. It is typically around 10% of your Azure spend, but may be lower if your Azure spend is over a certain threshold. Moving on, question number 31. You are tasked with deploying Azure virtual machines for your company. You need to make use of the appropriate cloud deployment solution. You should make use of software as a service. Does the solution meet the goal? The correct answer is no. Keyword is the virtual machine. Then we should go with infrastructure as a solution. Question 32. You are tasked with deploying Azure virtual machines for your company. You need to make use of the appropriate cloud deployment solution. Solution. You should make use of platform as a service. Does the solution meet the goal? The correct answer is no. Now, this is because VMs are deployed in infrastructure as a solution. Moving on, question number 33. You are tasked with deploying Azure virtual machines for your company. You need to make use of the appropriate cloud deployment solution. Solution. You should make use of infrastructure as a service. Does the solution meet the end goal? The correct answer is yes. This is because virtual machines and Azure storage accounts is infrastructure as a solution. Moving on. Question 34. You are planning to migrate a company to Azure. Each of the company's numerous divisions will have an administrator in place to manage the Azure resources used by their respective division. You want to make sure that the Azure deployment you employ allows for Azure to be segmented for the divisions while keeping administrative effort to a minimum. Solution. You plan to make use of several Azure Active Directories. Does the solution meet the goal? The correct answer is B, no. Now, the proposed solution is that we should use Azure Active Directories. I think the keyword here is several. Why in the world a company will create several Azure Active Directories when it can create a single Azure Active Directories and organize its divisions right there? This is why I consider the correct answer B. Moving on. Question 35. Your company is planning to migrate all their virtual machines to an Azure pay-as-you-go subscription. The virtual machines are currently hosted on the Hyper-V hosts in a data center. You are required to make sure that the intended Azure solutions use the correct expenditure model. Solution. You should recommend the use of the elastic expenditure model. Does the solution meet the goal? The correct answer is no. Now, elasticity is not an expenditure model, rather it is one of the characteristics of cloud computing. Moving on. Question 36. Your company is planning to migrate all their virtual machines to an Azure pay-as-you-go subscription. The virtual machines are currently hosted on the Hyper-V hosts in a data center. You are required to make sure that the intended Azure solution uses the correct expenditure model. Solution. You should recommend the use of the scalable expenditure model. Does the solution meet the goal? The correct answer is no. Now, this is no because we have two expenditure models. One is Capex, another is Opex. So, scalable expenditure is not the right answer. Moving on, question 37. Your company is planning to migrate all their virtual machines to an Azure pay-as-you-go subscription. The virtual machines are currently hosted on the Hyper-V hosts in a data center. You are required to make sure that the intended Azure solution uses the correct expenditure model. Solution. You should recommend the use of the operational expenditure model. Does the solution meet the goal? The correct answer is A, yes. Now, operating expenditures are ongoing costs of doing business. Consuming cloud services in a pay-as-you-go model could qualify as an operating expenditure. Moving on. Question 38. You are required to deploy an artificial intelligence solution in Azure. You want to make sure that you are able to build, test, and deploy predictive analytics for the solution. Solution. You should make use of Azure Cosmos DB. Does the solution meet the goal? The correct answer is no. This is because Machine Learning Studio is a drag and drop tool you can use to build, test, and deploy predictive analytics solution. Azure Cosmos DB, on the other hand, is a fully managed NoSQL database for modern app development. AI fits with machine learning, not with Cosmos DB. Moving on, question number 39. Your company's Active Directory forest includes thousands of user accounts. You have been informed that all network resources will be migrated to Azure. Thereafter, the on-premises data center will be retired. You are required to employ a strategy that reduces the effect on users once the planned migration has been completed. Solution. You plan to sync all the Active Directory user accounts to Azure Active Directory. Does the solution meet the goal? The correct answer is A, yes. Use Azure AD Connect to do this. Moving on, question number 40. You are required to deploy an artificial intelligence solution in Azure. You want to make sure that you are able to build, test, and deploy predictive analytics for the solution. Solution. You should make use of Azure Machine Learning Studio. Does the solution meet the goal? The correct answer is yes. Machine Learning Studio is a drag and drop tool you can use to build, test, and deploy predictive analytics solution. Now, these are all the questions for this video. You can find the free PDF of this video along with the exam dumps of our other certification exams on our website certyiq.com. Thanks for watching.